and gentlemen. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Okay, I don't know if you hear me through the microphone or it's my loud voice that's coming through. But either way, yes. Thank you very much. I'm going to be in conversation for the next 45 to 50 minutes with Nadezomia, who's you might wonder on the subject of Igbo spirituality in contemporary Nigeria. You might wonder, looking at this young man, what his credentials are. I will leave him to be a bit more expansive by his responses to the questions I've put together for him. I think that's the greatest test of whatever knowledge or qualifications he has to deal with the subject. Suffice it to say that for 36 years, I've known his family, and I've known of knowledge that that family carries, particularly his father, who in my eyes is a legend. So I will declare an now. You know, he is a legend in my eyes. Now. You know, he is a legend in my eyes, a man whose scholarship followed for many years, apart from his core area of estate management, but his gravitas in spirituality, Igbo spirituality and Igbo cosmology is second to none. So it is a privilege for me to have a conversation with him. It was meant to be his brother, but there's, you know, Musu is the brother of Musu, as we say. So, Nedozie, thank you very much. And we've had a bit of a journey getting here, because don't be fooled by his gentle look. He was very exacting about what the conversation should be like. We had to have a structure, because for both of us, it's not a joke. It's a very, very serious subject. So please join us. I'll put a few questions to him, which give him a landscape, a football field to travel. And then subsequent to the questions, we will throw the questions open to the floor to answer. So we're going to, I'll work with him for 30 minutes. And then so the last 20 minutes, I'll leave to the audience. Now, if we finish earlier, well, more power to you. So, now, my first question, Igbo spirituality. When people see that, I'm sure people who read the program will have thought, idolatry, idol worship. Are they right? Are they right?
Well,
it's a bit so,
in Igbo spirituality, idol worship. Can you hear me now? Okay. So, is Igbo spirituality idol worship? That's a very interesting question, and it's one that has been going on for quite a while, since the advent of Christianity in Nigeria. My answer to that is no, it is not idol worship. For that, we need to look at the definition of idols. So an idol is a material representation of a deity, okay, which is used in worship. And if you take that definition further into the biblical sense, it is an image. The idol, the idol is a material representation of a deity, which is used in worship. Taking that definition further into biblical sense, it is the image of a deity other than God. So hold that thought for a second whilst we explore briefly Igbo spirituality, which is the understanding of the nature of existence, the nature of consciousness, the nature of the self and soul. Now, central to Igbo spirituality is the concept of God, Chukwu, the Great Spirit. Chukwu is the totality or the aggregation of all Chis. Chi, all elements, all objects, everything in creation has a Chi. I have a Chi. Everyone in this audience has a Chi. It is part and parcel of God. The inanimate objects as well. The abstractions, this chair has a Chi. The floor has a Chi. The roof of this building has a Chi. Even abstract concepts have a Chi, which means that nothing, absolutely nothing, can exist outside of God, Chukwu. Chukwu is the aggregation of all the Chis. And central to Igbo spirituality is that idea of a unity of creation. Now let's explore a little bit what we see when someone is worshipping an idol.
With due respect, he's actually speaking as loud as he can. Can we just, maybe if we kept quiet, would hear him? Because we're interrupting him, please. Thank you. Please, can we just let him carry on? I beg you, because these interruptions don't help us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So when we move away from that background I've given you of the conception of the spirituality, in summary, let's now look at prayer, right? Someone is standing in front of a statue or a carving in supplication to a deity or an energy or what have you. We need to understand what the prayer is all about. Now, the Igbo prayer has a standard format. There will be the throwing of chalk, nzu. There will be the breaking of a kola nut. There will be the offering, whether it be food item or a sacrifice. And finally, there's a libation being poured. Now, if you go into the prayer itself, he will invoke God first. Chukwa biama tuanzu. He's inviting God, the supreme being, to, partake of the throwing of chalk. Now, the symbolism of that throwing of chalk is peace, is purity, is spirit. I come to the spirit in peace and purity and love. Throw the nzu with me, which means meet me in that space of worship with your best and highest qualities. Now he starts from Chukwu and talks about and then invites the abstractions like Anyanwu Bose, the daylight and the day, and starts listing the various energies. The Holy Spirit, which is Nawu, Emily, God's daughter, and continues, goes through the entire list of energies, inanimate objects that he can remember. And at the end, he would say, that is, let everything congregate. Let all of creation congregate. If I name you, if I call you, call your kith and kin, come and join me through Nzu. Let us meet ourselves in a space of love and purity. Okay? Once that happens, he then breaks the kola nut. What he's doing in essence is communing with all of creation. Now I ask you, what is all of creation? That is God, Chukwu. He's not praying to an idol. He's communing with the totality of creation. Yes, he may want to work with a certain aspect of God, a certain energy of God. Maybe he wants to address his Ikenga, which is the divine archetypal masculine force. But that prayer to Ikenga, or that request to Ikenga, would start with a supplication to God and all of creation. That none of them exist outside of God. The other thing I want to talk about, still within this topic, is the fact that the worshipper themselves, or himself or herself, realizes that what he's doing is not worshiping an idol. Because the Igbos have a saying that Ufike bulunku agwu, ulone obuluna agwu, uburu agwu, onye choba agwu, agwu dị na Chukwu. I'll translate that. Ufike is the non-dibia, the non-magical person. For those of you who are into popular culture and you've read Harry Potter, the nearest equivalent I could, call an Ufike is a muggle, a non-magical person. So the point is, a non-magical person or the unenlightened one picks up the carving of a deity and believes he has carried a deity. He's wasting his time. That hunk of wood is not a deity. If you want that deity, you go into God. That is where the deity resides. And therefore the worshipper knows this. In this manner, you understand that they're not worshipping idols. They know that they're not worshipping an idol. Right? Now, with the advent of colonialism and the early missionaries, they can be forgiven for believing that what they're seeing is idol worship, because they didn't have access to the knowledge of what was going on. You can observe someone, praying at their shrine, praying in front of their grove. But unless you understand what they're doing, you can only describe it in terms of what you see. And Igbo spirituality is rife with layers of meaning. You might find this meaning I'm sharing with you very deep, but I assure you that in some areas it's even far deeper. Right? So in that sense, sorry, I was looking at the audience. Please. I think it's a very important issue to sort of address. So in that sense, it is in no way the worship of an idol. Even if I were to pray to this, I don't know, microphone stand, this has a chi. God is inside here. God is, it contains God, an element of God. And if I'm speaking to this, God is hearing me. It is not idol worship. In the same way, God does not live in a house. We call, well, people refer to church as the house of God. So I ask you, does it mean if you step outside of a church, God is no longer with you? It's preposterous. So in that sense, I hope I've given you food for thought to understand that it is by no means idol worship. It's been derided, as idol worship, animism. And again, I would sort of cut some slack to Western, visitors, right, who call this animism, purely because we believe that everything has a soul, or everything has a chi. What they're lacking, perhaps, is how we view the way all these things that have a chi, how we interact with them. We don't interact with an object outside of the others. If I'm interacting with this object, I'm interacting with all of creation. If I'm interacting with this object, I'm interacting with all of creation. And therefore, if I'm praying to Amadioha here, I'm not praying to Amadioha as the deity. I'm praying to God. If I'm praying to, I don't know, Ahobinago, I'm not praying to I'm praying to God, because we are all interconnected. And that's the fundamental difference in the thought patterns of the African, of the Igbo man, as distinct from Western thought patterns, which it tends to categorize things without giving it much. Now, I'm making a generalization here, so forgive me, but it tends to put things in a category. This is that. You're praying to this particular deity, and this deity is different from that deity. These are all aspects of the same force, and all these forces are aspects of God, as you are. So I suppose I've addressed that question.
Yeah, but you've raised other questions, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you. Now, the next question is because what you've now told us is that idolatry is a fallacy. That's the notion of idolatry in the book of the notion of idolatry as the overarching feature of Igbo spirituality is a fallacy. Now, I'm going to ask you then, because you've made extensive reference to the Godhead. Now, you also talk about the deities. Can you be a bit more expansive about the channel of, is there an hierarchy? The channels of communication between the deities, between man, the deities, and Chukwu. A bit more expansive, because what you've done is you've titillated the audience, because now they can't get their eyes off this microphone stand. So, if you could assist us by, that. Relationship between the Chukwu, the various deities as they exist, and indeed man. Just a bit of background as to the structure.
Okay, that's fine. So when we talk of Chukwu, as I mentioned, Chukwu is the supreme spirit. Chi is spirit. Is the aggregate of all the chis. Chukwu is invoked or praised, addressed, if you like, as Okikechi, Okikowa, the sharer, the shared chi, the creator of the world. Awuwawalefe, Nokikekelefe, the cutter or the splitter of things, the creator of things. What did it split? what did it cut? It split itself. And that's why you have chi in every quantum, every part of creation. If you're looking at relationship with deities and hierarchy, that is a subject that might take us a lifetime to complete, but I will try to address it. Chikwu, which is the totality of all things, has given function to all manner of creation, right? And every element of creation is allocated a chi in accordance with the function God wants it to do. At the apex of creation, we've got, at the apex of creation, of God's creation, we've got Nago, which leading authorities in this field deem the Holy Spirit. You also have the daughter of God, Isisi or Isis. Akete or Igwe, that is the great goddess. And I must mention, even though we refer to Chukwu as a he, that's a more recent thing. The original Igbo spirituality, Chukwu is a woman. The age-old, the Igbo people are the original people in the world. That is what, and it is not a flippant statement. You would see elements, fundamental elements of Igbo spirituality in all ancient cultures in the world. I'll give you an example. Anubis, the god of death in Egypt, one of the oldest gods of Egypt, is Anubi Isinkita in Igbo spirituality. That is Anubi, the dog-headed deity. What does it signify? It is death. Because Anubi Isinkita emerged from Abasi, the bag of hatred. So, I think I had someone sort of wasn't very impressed with the statement that God is a woman. I think I'll elaborate on that. So the world has gone through so many ages. The patriarchy is more or less a recent thing. Throughout the ages of the world, God, in the very original sense, was deemed a woman. God is a force. God is pure spirit, right? It is genderless in the true sense of the word. However, as we live on the earth plane is a duality. We must assign it a gender. And in the original Igbo spirituality, God is a woman. It was at the advent of the age of Ikenga and Galinabo that we changed God to a man. But the key spirit at the apex of the creation, the Trinity, is a woman. Nago Udiobala, Obala, Anwanwa, the deathless light, and Usobala, the sun woman. That's the Trinity, all women. God's daughter, Demmili, that's a woman. And even now we've moved into the patriarchy where we refer to God as a he. Original Igbo Dibias that are worth their salt will tell you that that is a contradiction in terms, because chi, by definition, is a creative force. That is a female energy. And that is why Igbos say, Inwe chi, you're lucky. But Inwe okechi, male chi, you're unlucky. So therefore, if chi is a female energy, the total aggregation of the female energy cannot be a man. So don't get so attached to those labels. When someone says God is a woman or God is a man, you start shouting, no. Let's understand it for what it is. It is pure spirit. But for the purposes of us dwelling in this world, it's a world of duality. Therefore, we need to understand it in that manner. Okay, so back to your question. I'm sorry, I did digress. I did digress. Your question of 10 minutes, okay. That's fine. Right, okay. So when we talk about the hierarchy of spirits, this is it's too wide for me to go into here, but I just given you that Trinity, right, which is at the apex of creation, and whose function is to channel God's energy to the world. Chukwu is Chukwu Abia Ama. Abia is knowledge and wisdom. Ama is revelation. So Chukwu Abia Ama is the supreme being, the hidden knowledge and wisdom that reveals itself through the agency of Awu, the spirit that controls creation. Within the Awu spirit, you have the Muzi, the muses that inspire mankind. So God reveals his knowledge and wisdom through these spirits. Spirits are still part and parcel of God. Don't see them as outside of God, because they're not. The Igbo also say that if you have a chi inside, you can also go directly to God. You don't need to go through anyone. Again, that comes back to the unity of creation.
So excited, I almost forgot to pick up the microphone. Well, thank you for that. That was, I could not possibly ask you a full-on question. Usually I have full-on questions I need to unraveling. I don't need to. I'll leave that to the audience because you certainly answered mine. But I'm going to go on to the next question now, which it's important because we have a variety of backgrounds, of theological dispositions in this hall. So it's important that we look at the various sides to this. Now, predominantly in Igbo land, the Christian theology became the most influential, or the more influential, as after 1901, or should I say after 1857, Christian theology obviously spread its wings. So it is important to now ask a question. It appears there are structural similarities between Igbo and Christian theology. Is that correct? And also, on the alternative, I know you probably will understand the question, because obviously what you've done, one thing you've very clearly highlighted is the need for us to break away from that binary reasoning, which is a precept of the introduced, or should I say the foreign bodies in our midst. But then, it is important for us to ask this question. What are the structural similarities between Igbo and Christian theologies?
Thank you for that question. Before I answer that question, I will answer that question, but before I do, I think it's very important to set the context. When you're comparing similarities between two objects, I think there's an underlying supposition, an assumption that they're on equal footing. They're not. Let me just make that clear. Igbo spirituality, the Igbos deem themselves the original people in the world, and as I said before, it is not a flippant statement. So it far predates, by far, all these religions that we have today. Okay? So, I would call what I'm saying, I'll call what I'm saying a listing of Igbo spiritualist elements in the Christian world. So the first one is the belief in a supreme being. I think I've spoken a bit at length about Chukwu. There's also the concept of Trinity in Christianity. This is not new in Igbo spirituality at all. I just discussed the fact that Nagu, which is at the apex of God's creation, is a Trinity. Nagu is the Holy Ghost in Igbo spirituality and is the mother of Obala. Just a quick step back. Agwo is agwagwo, endlessness, infinity. And Igbo say that agwa dehe madawo. Without agwo in existence, humanity is finished. So that tells you the importance of this force in keeping the wheels of creation running and turning to enable, the souls of man to incarnate and gain experience for the evolution. I digress. So back to it. It is a trinity because it is in the original mystical language. Its name is Udiobala, right? It is the mother of Obala, the deathless light, right? And the deathless light itself, or the sun, is mother to Anyanwu, Nwanyanwu, which is the sun woman. So that is the trinity at the apex of creation. Now within Nagu itself is a trinity. There's Agwumili, which is the Agwo that reveals knowledge of how to control the weather. There's Agwudibia, which is the Agwo that reveals the knowledge of divination. And there's Agwudibia, I apologize. It is the Agwo that reveals knowledge of herbs and plants in the forest. And Abiankata is the Agwo that reveals knowledge of divination. So there's a trinity within a trinity. It is a concept that is central to Igbo spirituality. See what I mean? So to my mind, is far more complete than Christianity, which is perhaps a later religion, right? I don't know whether we haven't got a lot of time for this, but I would have delved into the fact that in Igbo numerology, 3 is a very important number. Right? It's a number of stability. Igbo say akwụkwanato itesidonọkụ, which means when you have 3 pillars, there's stability, the pot sits and simmers. And tonto is knowledge, which is 3 into 3. That is 9. And 9 is the number of the dibia, the adept, or the master of wisdom and knowledge. And once you move beyond 9, which is the number of self-mastery, you get into 10. Numerologically speaking, 10 is 1, which brings you back to God, unity of creation. So that's the first, I would say, similarity we've got. But I think there's a superior concept at work here. Yes, in Christianity, you do have the concept of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost. I think it's here. And then the third bit is the concept of immortality. I think the Christian faith believes in the immortal soul. And when people pass on, sorry, I'm not an expert in Christian religion, so forgive me if I just speak about this thing in very general terms. When you pass on, you join God in heaven, or you go to hell, depending on how you've lived your life. In Igbo spirituality, you do have the belief in the immortality of the soul, but it goes further. It goes further to explain the concept of reincarnation. So the human soul is not restricted to one life on earth. Whatever you reap, whatever you sow, you will reap. If you sow good, you will reap goodness. If you sow evil or discord, you will reap terrible repercussions over lifetimes. Yes, within the Christian faith, there is the belief that you had the Redeemer, Christ the Redeemer, who came to redeem the world of its sins. And if whoever believes is saved, you will not be cast into hellfire. We don't have that. Whatever you do, we believe in the concept of divine justice. Whatever you do, we'll pay for it. If not in this lifetime, over a series of lifetimes. So to me, that is an even more complete concept, conception of immortality. rather than, okay, you know, I don't know, become a serial killer, and suddenly if I believe in Jesus, all my sins are forgiven, and that's it. I won't pay repercussions. Yeah, God is love. Yes, we believe that. You'll be forgiven, but you're going to pay for things you've done. That is it. So that's another. I mean, I wouldn't call it a similarity. I would call it an extension of an idea, or a complete idea. I mean, because
I think it's more or less the same thing, because one way or another, even there's a concept of purgatory in Christian theology, and even though your imaginal case, but you still have to be purged of your, let's say, of your iniquity before passing over to the to heaven. So there is some similarity, but I'm sorry, I'm going to have to truncate you there. But I think the point is generally made. I'm going to move on now, because we look at the contemporary context. Because look, I was speaking as an historian. We've seen the trajectory, of the traditional, as they say, traditional religion. But should I say the pure spiritual Igbo spirituality is what I would prefer to call it, transitioned into the present day. And I know certainly what my great grandfather. I know how my great grandfather worshipped. I knew how my grandfather worshipped, because he became a Christian in the 1920s, because he had to get into DMGS first of all, but later on he imbibed it, because there were certain teasers that were given to us to cross over. Anyway, in the contemporary context, my question is double-headed. Is there a place for this, for Igbo spirituality? Does it have a place in the contemporary context? Is there amongst our kin? It's an obvious question. I know your question is, your answer is obvious. But then the second part is this. Do you see, or have you witnessed, a renaissance or reawakening of our people to our original spirituality? That's my final question.
Okay. Thank you for that question. I think I'll take the initial one, the first one, which is there a place for Igbo spirituality in contemporary, world? Well, I don't know. Maybe I should invite someone from the audience to answer that question, because
Yes.
my father, for example, is a scholar. He's a university don. Even if I say so myself, he studied at the universities of Cambridge and London, right? He's a dibia, a practicing dibia. But if you see him, you'll never guess. My grandfather was one of the early educated ones, and he worked as a clerk during the colonial period. And if you see him in his full white get-up, with a country hat, the sun hat, a safari suit, one of the first people who had, a bicycle then in the 19, I think, I believe it's 1919 or something, or at the turn of the century. You would never guess. I never met him, but when I'm told, or when I understand the depth and extent of his knowledge, a lot of which he refused to teach my father, purely because he thought that we live in the Igbo age of Ogazi, which is a very destructive age, and therefore we are not fit to have some of the deeper knowledge transmitted to us. So, very much so. And I suppose to address it to perhaps people who are not very familiar with the forms and modes of practice, Igbo spirituality doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a grove, a shrine, etc. Right? There are different forms of prayer. Your prayer can be ritualistic in nature. There's also unspoken prayer, and there's also ikumendo, taking in the breath of life, which is like which it is asserted that the Oriental cultures learnt from us. When you are, inhaling, doing the umendo, you are inhaling prana, your chi, life force. And when you're doing that, you're reconnecting to all there is, to all of creation. You don't need a shrine for that. You can do it out there. You can sit in the park, you can sit in your car and do that. So Igbo spirituality shouldn't be put in a box. As God is the totality of creation, the forms of worship of God as diverse as creation itself. Even, I mean, it was only until I got into Igbo spirituality that I learned that there are prayers that are unspoken prayers or wordless prayers, which, if you're pure, if your hands are clean, can be more powerful than any magic in the entire universe, because you're connecting right back to God, stripping out every, I suppose, every layer, material layer you have. You're connecting spirit to spirit. So I mean, I think it's a good message to get out there that Igbo spirituality isn't something, and it's rather ignorant to deem it animism, deem it idol worship. You need to understand what it is and understand the deep values in it. And as you advance in those deep values, you realize that this contains, I mean, almost everything you can think of. So yes, it is very much so a contemporary practice. And just the final point on that, some of the dibia, the adepts or experts in knowledge and wisdom, they're like you and I. They're hidden in plain sight. It's not the things you see on TV, this dramatic, people jingling and jangling and have, there's a time and place for that. But that's, it's when you sit down and speak to some of their highly educated, highly intelligent, erudite scholars who have a deep idiomatic grasp of their language, of the English language and other languages, and most importantly, the language of the universe, the mystic Alpha language, which encompasses all the languages spoken on earth and yet to be spoken on earth. But I think I go too far. If you want to, we don't have the time for that right now. But yeah, so the second question, the last question is about the Renaissance. I think that's a wonderful question, and one which I asked personally speaking. If you cast your minds back to, I mean, you must have been reading the news and been following popular culture where it's been touted that we are now living in, well, we're at the dawn of a new age, the age of Aquarius. And you might wonder, what is the age of Aquarius? It is the age of enlightenment. And for those of you who were around in London, well, anywhere you were in the world, much was made of the fact that the Mayan calendar was going to end on the 21st of December 2012. And there was so much speculation. Does this mean that the world was going to end? Blah, 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 blah. I asked this question of my father. What is going to happen on December 21st, 2012? Is the world really going to end? He looked at me and laughed, just said, no, it's not going to end. On December 21st, 2012, the world is entering into Ogao, the age of the sun, during which things that have been hidden over the ages will be revealed in the light of day. So yes, there is a renaissance happening, because the truth will be gradually revealed. Age-old truth that's been hidden for ages will be gradually revealed, and as we sort of demonstrate ourselves to be worthy of that, we will be availed of the truth. And I mean, this is a testament of that renaissance. I'm quite surprised that I have this many people in the audience coming to listen to this topic. I really believed it was going to be a handful of people. It does testify to the pursuit of knowledge, which is commendable in all of you, each and every one of you in the audience, and it does speak to that renaissance. And so I do hope that this tidbit I've shared here, I mean, I do hope that it snowballs into something far more positive and something greater than ourselves. Really. And please understand that I'm not here to castigate your religion or your deeply held beliefs. I'm here to explain I give you insights into the spirituality of the Igbos, which has been wrongly castigated, which has been wrongly dismissed. I'm here to tell you what it is and give you food for thought. Now, if you want to research deeply, you can refer to the leading experts on leading authorities in the field, right? There's so many books on this. Books, by my father, Professor Emeritus Umi. Now, I'm not plugging his books, but this is just to let you know that you do have things out there. You need to have that thirst for knowledge. He didn't sit me down and start teaching me things. I took that interest. And it's an interest that is going to be, it's going to live in me as long as I live. And I do encourage you to take a lot more interest in things to do with your culture.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it. I mean, I don't think there's absolutely nothing to add. The only thing I would say is we have a name for people like this gentleman here. And really, I mean, talk about, there's so much knowledge there, which we've only scratched the surface. So we have, any questions out in the audience? I think there's a gentleman out there or a lady. All right. So who's going to pass the microphone to her?
Hi. Oh gosh. Thank you so much. My name is Cordelia Okoye. I'm so happy to just hear this amazing talk. I saw your last name, Ume, and I thought, oh my gosh, could he be the son or relative of this professor who, because I actually emailed your dad like about a month ago or 2 months ago, because his books are really hard to find at the moment. As a matter of fact, I think, isn't he the one who wrote God is Dibia, or
After God is Dibia?
After God is Dibia, yes. Great. So you are the, okay. So, sorry. The reason why I'm so excited is because, and I'm so happy that I think that this was like law of attraction, is that the books currently online, it's really hard to find them. And at the moment right now, After God is Dibia currently is like over $1,000 on Amazon right now, because there's only like 1 or 2 copies that can be found. So I actually emailed your dad and I said, hi, you don't know me, but here's my name and I'm from Nebraska. And I just wondered if possibly, there's a way we could find your books. And he said he would send me some. I know it's hard because it's coming from Nigeria, but I just wondered how, because this is really, there's actually, at the moment right now, there's a huge renaissance, particularly amongst those of us in the diaspora who want to get in touch with the culture, and the best way to get in touch with the culture, obviously, is with the language, which we've struggled with in the diaspora, but also with the religion, the traditional religion, which has been maligned. And many of our parents' generation have kind of, I wouldn't say that they're trying to push us away from the traditional religion, but there's a lot of, maybe because of their upbringing in like the missionary schools, there's a lot of fear about, this is juju, or this is black magic, or, everybody has that relative in your family who nobody shakes their hand because they do, like, they're in this cult or that cult. And the thing is, I feel like, as somebody who was born abroad and who's been disconnected, myself and my siblings, I know, and kind of instinctively, that this is a way, because many African Americans, Nigerian Americans, other Americans abroad, for example, I'm speaking from the U.S. point of view, we kind of know that we're getting attracted to the religion, but we don't know how to get the information. Some of these books are in some libraries, but it's very hard to find. For example, After God is Dibia in particular. I mean, that one at the moment right now, you can check it online, Amazon.com. Sorry, that it is over $1,000 right now. So I just wondered if there's any way you could advise on this. Thank you. Sorry for the long.
Let's take the next question. Next
Okay. Why don't we sort of catch up after this sort of forum, if that's okay? We can exchange us.
My name is Innocent Abonyi. I want to say something about the Renaissance, the last question you asked him. In 2014, I had the privilege of attending a conference in Burkina Faso. And that conference was to discuss and to come out with some kind of materials that will form a curriculum for the teaching of African traditional religion, which is known as ATR in academia then, I don't know. And then that was it. And before that conference, there were some other conferences as well in some other places. I had to attend this one. I don't know whether that eventually saw the light of day, but just to say that even this forum, this gathering, is also a renaissance of some sort. Our people don't know much about ATR. They don't know much about our religion. And that's one point. So there's some renaissance coming. Maybe someday the material that came out of those conferences will be introduced in universities and secondary schools, because ATR is a religion of its own right. The same way we teach Islam and Christianity, so it should be taught as well in some way.
Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that comment. Just one thing to state. It would be good for us to always bear in mind that what we're discussing here is not just religion, it's spirituality, which it encompasses far more than religion. Religion is more or less the knowledge which has been reduced into dogma, right? So they might call it ATR, that's fine, but I would encourage people to look at African spirituality or Igbo spirituality, which has a value system that drives everything you do, not just when you kneel down to pray. Okay, so thank you for your comments. I really appreciate that. I mean, I'm not taking credit for it, but I do agree with you. But I just want us to broaden that definition. Let's not reduce it to ATR. It isn't a religion. It's far more than that. Yeah.
Okay, I've got a question. Like you said, most of our families were forced to cross over, and most of us now belong to different religions. And the first time I know your family very well, and I always thought, how is it possible that some members of your family are able to belong to other religion as well as do the Igbo religion? Have you got any advice? Because I am a Christian myself, and I've got a son, and I would really want to educate him in Igbo spirituality, but also how can you combine the two? Because this is the reality of the world that we live in now. And with all the work that's being done in quantum physics, it's now the evidence is that everything is basically the same. So what advice would you give me in terms of how can I bring up my son? I don't want him to grow up in the ignorance in which I grew up in, because the first time that I learned that your dad was a Dibia, I actually laughed. But now I'm laughing at my own ignorance. So how do I make sure that my son doesn't grow up as ignorant as I've grown up? Thank you.
I think she deserves a round of applause for the very last statement she made, that when she heard my father was a Dibia, she laughed, but now she understands that she was laughing at her own ignorance. I think it takes a great strength of character to admit when you're wrong, and and that is the very first step to learning, understanding that you know nothing. Even what I think I know here, it is nothing compared to what people like my father and perhaps the sages of the old knew. My advice to you and perhaps and to your son is, first of all, make the library your friend. Start reading, right? You need to inculcate in the children a thirst for knowledge. Shut down that TV. That television isn't helping you. Limit the time. I mean, I don't have children yet, but these are the rules I applied to myself, and my father applied to us. Go pick up a book, leave that TV. He'll leave you with, it's your choice, what reading material you pick up, so long as it's educational, is insightful, is entertaining, but not dross. So the very first step is educating yourself on the subject. Read far and wide. Within that subject area, there must be some things that pique his curiosity, his interest. Then the other thing I needed to address is your concern. How do you mix them? when you say how you mix them, it presupposes that they're different. I hope I made myself clear when I said when you're comparing the two schools of thought, let's not go with the assumption that it's one and the same thing. One predates the other. In fact, there is nothing you find in Christianity that you don't find in Igbo spirituality and more. So it is a more complete version of original spirituality because that is the revealed knowledge from God himself. So I suppose when your son gets reading and you read as well yourself, you should direct his reading by that basic premise. It isn't one or the other. We are not, and let us not use any other religion to try and lend credence to African Igbo spirituality. Like I said, Igbo spirituality, the fundamental tenets are found in all original cultures in the world, and Igbos have it that they are the original people in the world, right? We're the first ones in Dembo. Tell that to your son, and if all else fails, bring him to me.
Yes, it's wonderful to actually have you here because some of the things you have been saying, I've been saying for a long time, but I've been almost talking to myself. There is a concept because you've talked about God, and in Western religion, God has a nemesis called the devil. And one of the things that really hurts me is the fact that we have now come to equate the devil with Ekwensu. Now, it is my belief that these two things are actually different. What is your take on that? Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question. It is something that is one of the fallacies or one of the misconceptions of Igbo spirituality. In Igbo spirituality, we do not have the concept of the devil. The entity or the energy called Ekwensu is not the devil. It is addressed Ekwensu gotubula jagwo. It is the beautiful eagle that pecks to death the evil snake. Would the devil be pecking to death, its fellow evil? No. It is, I wouldn't even call it an approximation. It is it's a concept that's just been turned on its head and utilized, by Christianity. So no, Ekwensu is not devil. Now the Igbos do recognize that they're evil spirits, but they're not Ekwensu. Evil spirits, they're myriad. You have Ndi Ogbonuke, peers who have crossed over and are causing confusion. You have Obodinana, abomination, that occurred, ages ago, creating trouble. Demons. You have, people between the planes, they haven't fully crossed over, they're stuck between the earth plane and the astral. And in frustration, they're acting out against, people on earth. So the list is endless. And it also tells you that you can defeat all those demons. Rather than something to be feared, oh, the devil is here, what do I do? No. You have dominion to fight against such things, wreaking havoc in your life, or wreaking havoc around. However, Ekwensu is not devil. Okay? Ekwensu is the beautiful eagle that pecked the evil snake to death. It is a god of war, which has achieved countless victories. That is what Ekwensu is.
That's the last question, sadly.
Thank you, sirs, for your discourse today. I now know why I came from America to this London for my first time. So I came away from Christianity and into Igbo spirituality via your father's book some 10 years ago. Since then, I found Taoism, and I have a Taoist teacher and I have a Dibia teacher, and the two walk hand in hand in terms of medicine. It's quite interesting. So that's just to let people know that this is a real thing. Just in China, they accept their medicine people, and in Nigeria, we seem to still reject ours. That has to change. But in the context of what I want to ask you is, a lot of people acknowledge, say, Egypt, ancient Egypt, or what they call Kemet, as the fountainhead of spirituality. But it was through your father's works I saw the correlations and some of the examples you gave today, like the Anubis, some correlations of this Igbo idea that predates even that. But my question is, where do you find these sources that are, because the Yorubas, people know about Yoruba medicine because they have more of a written tradition. Igbos tend to be more oracular, oral tradition. So for those of us who are starving for this information to flesh it out for the others and for ourselves, where would you lead us? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. The short answer is, if you're searching for knowledge, search everywhere. Ngiga is, what's the explanation now? It's a basket where it's kept in the kitchen where you dry spices and fish. So it's an obscure. If you're looking for if you're searching for your watch, for example, clearly it wouldn't be in there, but because you're searching frantically, please look there as well. It could be there. So that's the approximation. So you search everywhere. Even when you get to Igbo land, assuming you've got the time and the resources to do that, because I know that this is difficult. I think we need to understand that the oracular tradition is a way, or a vehicle, or a mechanism by which this hidden knowledge has been protected for ages. And it's not something for sale. It is not something that will be shared. The path of the Dibia, for example, is a path to self-mastery. To become an adept in hidden knowledge and wisdom is a journey of a lifetime or lifetimes. Divination, for example, if someone agrees to teach you divination, it will take at least 20 years for you to become a competent apprentice. So you need to develop friendships that last a lifetime. And such friendships, there'll be testing. You'd undergo test of mettle. Have you got the character for us to share this knowledge with you? What are you going to do with it? And even if you've got the character for us to share the knowledge, is it safe to do so? What if you share it with someone else? If that person wreaks havoc with it, you would have to live with the guilt. We'd have to live with the guilt. When I say we, I'm not, you see what I mean, right? So the only thing is keep searching. Go to Nigeria, go to Igbo land, talk to people. You would always get tidbits, but do not expect that if you spend a month or a year, you come away and become a DBA, or you come away with full knowledge. That's not going to happen. Start reading to start with. It's the tradition. It's the mechanisms for sharing knowledge in Igbo spirituality is built in such a way that you get to know, you get to learn what you need to know. They will share things with you on a purely need-to-know basis. They don't care if you think they're stupid. They don't care if you think they're not very bright. It is on a need-to-know basis. And for me, even myself, sometimes when I, ask certain questions, it's not forthcoming. And then years later, the answer comes, and I'm thinking, well, why didn't you share it with me then? But it's just to let you know it's a journey of a lifetime to sort of learn this, and you have to be immersed in the culture. But the leading authorities have done fantastic work in curating some of this language and sharing as much as possible. So I enjoin you to, pick those things up, try to discuss them, and when they see interest, they're more willing to share more with you. And I hope this helps you on your journey and your search for knowledge, but it's very commendable that you're doing this.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, a round of applause.